Hey there everybody, welcome to GameSpring. Since the release of Majora's Mask 3D, I've been delivering video after video on the Zelda franchise, but alas, the time has come for this little marathon of mine to end. And what better way to send off the series for now than to list off my favorite games in the franchise. This list was harder than most. All throughout these past weeks, I've been reading a lot, and I mean a lot, of different opinions on the many games in the franchise. And of the 17 games which currently encompass the main series, there really isn't one that I don't like. The list I made before all these Zelda videos started has since shifted and morphed as I had to revisit literally every game in the franchise. And after giving it much thought, I'm confident that these are my personal top 10 Zelda games. First off, we have Four Swords Adventures, not a game that you find in most people's list, which I believe to be the most undeservedly forgotten Zelda title. I know most tend to pass this over, thinking it was a multiplayer-only title, but I've only ever played Four Swords Adventures in single player, and it completely blew my expectations out of the water. Controlling 4 links with unrestrained item use and ridiculous situations is a rare thrill, and this game does not hold back. My favorite scenario in the game is where you must push a house around to activate its flamethrowers to kill a bunch of dead rocks. It's ridiculous, and it's fun, and that's why I love it so much. If you're not sure what The Legend of Zelda Third Quest is, you can watch my last video on it here, where I go into much more detail, but suffice to say, it's a version of the original NES game which plays much better. While I can still enjoy the original game, its outdated structure frustrates me without a guide, but Third Quest plays like I want it to. Some may cry foul since this is technically a fan game, but since it's based on BS Zelda, which was a Nintendo product, I'm gonna say it counts. Link's Awakening was the first Zelda game that I beat, and it originally started much closer to number 1 on this list. It has a great setting, and it still amazes me to this day just how well Nintendo was able to effectively bring Zelda into the small screen. Taking off my nostalgia glasses, however, while the game is still great, I do find it rather simple nowadays. The dungeons aren't the best, the item selection is rather bland, and the game is ridiculously easy. Do I still love it dearly despite this? Yes. Yes, I do. I bet most people expected Wind Waker to be higher on this list. The once most hated of all Zelda games is now one of its most beloved, even by those known for disliking the series. Still, when it comes down to it, while I of course like it enough to put it as my number 7, I just don't love playing it as much as I ever expect I will. If you're thinking I'm going to complain here about the sailing, don't count on it, because besides the map hunting, I do really like that part of the game. But rather, it's the bland and simple combat and dungeons that keep me from placing Wind Waker higher. The visuals are of course awe-inspiring, but it isn't actually my favorite depiction of the Zelda world. Instead, that would be Skyward Sword, the most controversial Zelda game in the universe. It seems that so many really love to hate this game. I don't know what it was that gathered all the contempt toward this game that's casually thrown around the internet nowadays, but it's something I'll never understand. Do I think that the motion controls enhance the game? No, not really. I actually kind of find the regular enemies to be a bit of a pain to fight now, but that doesn't take away from the many, many amazing things to be had here. While many decry it for being linear, it benefits from this by having a strong, well-told narrative, which I found engrossing from beginning to end. Combined with the art style, a brilliant compromise between the toon style of Wind Waker and the more realistic Twilight Princess, this watercolor world is undeniably gorgeous. When you add on some of the most unforgettable dungeons like the desert ship, as well as a series of interesting items, you have a Zelda game that no amount of internet hyperbole is going to make me cast aside. When I go back and play A Link to the Past now, I sometimes have trouble believing that it was only the 3rd game ever to be made in the franchise. The original Zelda may have coined the name, but A Link to the Past was the one that set the standard. And more than 2 decades later, it still kicks so much ass that every newer entry has to be measured against it. This was the first Zelda game I ever played, and its music, visuals, and gameplay have been forever burned into my brain. I could go on and on about it, but I'll save you some time and just say that everything in this game is classic. I'll never forget the way I felt back in 1998. In the mail came the latest issue of Nintendo Power, with this plastered on the cover. Inside, I found stories of what seemed to be the most monumental release in Nintendo's history. That Christmas, my older brother and I got the game, and I can recall watching him play through the first couple hours of it. When I finally started my own file, well, I was too afraid to even get through the Deku Tree. I was a timid boy growing up. I preferred easy games and avoiding conflict. I hated roller coasters and horror movies, and I never played a game as serious or as dark as this one. It took me a long time to finally beat this game, and I nearly gave up at one point because I was too afraid to even enter the Forest Temple after seeing my brother get taken by a wall master. But I managed to do it, and at the end of it all, I felt like the bravery Link had been able to display had become my own. Embarrassing, yeah, but it's the truth. This game had a deep effect on me, and I can trace my reaction to its themes of courage to making me a much bolder and more independent person as I grew up. So, after this very personal story, why is Ocarina at number 4? Well, it's over 15 years later, and looking back on it now, it just doesn't top these last 3 experiences. This is another game people really love to hate. I think, when it comes to Zelda games, they can be put into 2 camps, innovative and iterative. Saying that a game in a franchise is iterative is a really nasty criticism today, but in my opinion, iteration's not a bad thing as long as there's a significant refining of the mechanics. That is exactly what Twilight Princess does. Twilight Princess doesn't break any new ground, but it does take what worked in Ocarina of Time and sharpens it to such a degree that every moment feels stellar. Of all the games, Twilight Princess has the best dungeons in the Zelda franchise, and I stand by that wholeheartedly. As I stated, many of them take what was already there and re-implement them in clever and logical ways. Also, this game is gorgeous, I don't care what anyone says. There are moments of intense beauty and detail, interspersed with the bittersweet serenity of the Twilight Realm. The Twilight creatures, and especially Zant, look just as much at home in a Miyazaki masterpiece as they do in the Twilight Realm, and the theme of pushing back the Twilight invasion and bringing light back to the world still resonates with me today. This game is not too dark. If Wind Waker's style was that of the adventurous spirit of the sunrise, Twilight Princess is the sunset and the mysterious romanticism we all feel in watching it. Until I finally got my hands on this game, I would never have believed that any classic-style Zelda could top the mastery of A Link to the Past. But A Link Between Worlds, its spiritual sequel, accomplishes the impossible. It isn't just that the game includes a fascinating depiction of the alternate world Lorule, or that the new merging ability works incredibly well with the game's exploration and dungeon platforming, but by letting Link rent all of his main tools up front, it becomes the most inherently playable Zelda game in the series, cutting out a lot of the waiting and false anticipation of previous games by not gating its fun behind a sequence of dungeons. How any series can still be putting out hits of this caliber on its 17th installment is a mystery to me, but it goes to show just how much care and thought Nintendo puts into each new Zelda, even after nearly 3 decades. And number 1, we have Majora's Mask. Would you believe that the game whose very announcement for the 3DS inspired me to create this entire series of videos would happen to be my favorite Zelda game of them all? While not a surprising choice for number 1, let it not be understated just how much awe this game still holds for me. The gloomy atmosphere and overall feeling of imminent death hangs over every action of the player in this game, and I feel it's this theme that adds weight to everything you do. To be a bit critical, the dungeons in Majora's Mask don't totally eclipse others in the series, but Majora's isn't really a Zelda game like any other. It's more focused on side quests and the everyday lives of its rather ordinary fantasy folk. As you reset time again and again, it becomes clear that understanding the schedules, conflicts, and lives of the inhabitants here becomes just as important as your overall quest. I can remember these characters from the other games, but I don't know them like I do in Majora's Mask. I love this entire series, but Majora's Mask is simply a one-of-a-kind experience, one that can't be found in any other series in gaming. And it's my favorite Zelda game, bar none. This marks the end of my Zelda marathon for now, but as is always the case while planning and writing these episodes, I have amassed a huge list of future Zelda topics I want to tackle. But it's time to show some other series some love. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching, and I want to give a special shout out to Zelda Informer, Zelda Dungeon, Zelda Universe, and ScrewTack.com for sharing several of my videos and shining a light on this little channel of mine. I'm now on track to hit my first 1,000 subscribers soon, and I'll be making a special video for that milestone. If you like this video, be sure to take a moment to hit like and subscribe. It helps me out in so many ways, guys. Regardless, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.